Hey everybody, Once Bitten here. So I posted on Twitter and on my Facebook account recently asking for ideas for philosophical ramblings, and John Wagner from South Carolina is a buddy of mine. We play every now and then. He suggested I talk about how to grow a local scene, which I think is very timely since with the Age of Sigmar fiasco and the fracturing of the community, and then at least locally here in the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States, there's been such a a growth, I think, of some of the local areas that I think is something that a lot of people are playing around with ideas and doing some things that are right. So I think that it would be worth talking about. Although it's not a philosophical rambling, so I'm not going to call it that. But call it what you will. My hobby advice. I don't claim to know everything about this. I think though I have had success at growing local scenes, and I know there in one instance I grew a scene, and when I moved, the scene totally fell apart. So, not that it was all up to me, but I think there are things we can do that grow a scene and that keep us a local scene strong. And if we don't do those things, I think we they just fall apart. They're not self-nurturing necessarily. So that is the topic of tonight's talk. So, as you may or may not recall, about 6 years ago, I moved from one area of North Carolina out to the Midwest, and I was there for 1 year without my family. They were still living in North Carolina, trying to sell the house, and we were letting the kids you just go to school or whatever. And then the house finally sold at the end of the year. They moved out with me. We lived there another year, and then I took another job back to a different part of North Carolina. So here's the situation. I'm moving not all the way across the country, but I'm moving, 8 or 9 hours away from home. I'm living without my wife and kids nearby. I love at the time it was Warhammer Fantasy. I think it was probably 8th edition at that point. Um, I loved it. I had a YouTube channel. It was a big part of my life. I go to the area, and my impression was that it was really hard to start gaming there, which is just really, really funny. I was a prime candidate as a new player for that area, and I felt that I felt it just took kind of a lot of work to break into the scene. Now, I almost hesitate to say that because I have very fond memories of my time there, and a lot of the players I consider good friends. I mean, we became really good friends. Um, but I just, some weird things were that in North Carolina where I was at, our game night was on a Tuesday night or Thursday night, whatever it was, and there they played on weekends, and there were people there all day Saturday, all day Sunday, which was amazing to me because where I had come from, you wouldn't do that. I mean, a Saturday or Sunday, I'd be out mountain biking or playing volleyball or attending a kids soccer tournament all day. I mean, it was just weird. But anyway, so I couldn't wrap my brain around that. So I remember, I go to this new town. I'm living there. I've got nothing to do. I've like all of a sudden I don't have parental responsibilities. It's the weirdest thing. And I've got a couple armies, and so all right, no, I don't. I have one army at the time. So I go to the local game store on a Tuesday night, and just nobody's there, and I'm like, damn it. And so I talked to a couple people, and they were like, yeah, you should, people play on the weekends sometimes, or you sometimes just show up and you should see somebody. There was no way to really contact them that I knew about. Um, so, I went the first week there. I went a couple times, and I never saw anybody or I saw anybody playing. If I saw anybody that eventually I found out played, I didn't know it. So then, like the next week, I'm like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going stir crazy living in this place all by myself. So I just grabbed my stuff and I went down there on a weeknight and I just started painting because this was a big store that had a very big gaming area, a big painting area, and then just a lot of product for sale. And so I was painting, and like nobody talked to me the whole time. It was the weirdest thing. I just sat there and just painted for hours, and then um, I did that a couple times. And then actually there was a group of people that I thought were Warhammer players, and they ended up not being. I think they might have played 40K a little bit. They were mainly painters. And the truth is, they had one guy who was pretty nice, and most of them were just aloof, and one guy was just a real jerk. And so I was actually painting at a table near them, and I tried to strike up conversations with them, and they were being snooty. I just find that funny because in most social circles, I'm a fairly cool guy. I'm a fairly social guy, and I have these gaming nerds being snooty towards me. Like, I mean, not to be arrogant about it. I just found it like, what the hell, man? Are you kidding me? Anyway, finally, I think finally I took a leap of faith and went there on a Saturday and saw people playing games, and people weren't rude. They kind of just ignored me. I just kind of meandered around and struck up conversations, and it took a couple times before people finally started talking to me. And then, then it was fine. I could find a game, and then over time, I got to know them all and played a lot of games, and everything was great. It was so hard to break into it, and I'm thinking, in hindsight, I'm like, that kind of social system, if you will, isn't going to attract new players. And I don't know how many new players they have there now, and they're probably different now. I mean, like I said, I mean, it turned into a great scene, but um, yeah, man, I was looking for it. I was hardcore trying to break into the scene, and I felt it was hard. So, um, yeah, I'm kind of coming at it from that perspective because I came from an area where I had built a scene, and then when I left it, that scene kind of crumbled, and I went to a scene, and they had a scene, but it took me a while to break into it. And then by the time I left there, I think that scene became even more active and very healthy and blah blah blah. So, um, no huge point to that. That's my preface story. Here's my one big piece of advice, one thing I feel very strongly about, and that is this. Um, Playing games, the beer and pretzel games that you play in your basement, is fun, but it doesn't grow a local scene. It's too hard, and it's. I mean, there are times when you can grow your own club by playing in somebody's house and doing stuff like that. And playing there can be fun. I play in my house sometimes, and things like that, breaking out of the store and getting to somebody's home, in a lot of ways, kind of puts a different spin on the whole gaming atmosphere and can be very very cool. But as a regular ongoing system for playing, it's actually a really really bad way to grow a scene because how are people supposed to find you? It's exclusive by its very design. You have to be invited to somebody's home. And that's not always easy to overcome. One, some people just like it. That's what they've been doing. That's all they care about. And I think that's fine. I mean, don't listen to me, whatever. All I'm saying is you're not going to grow a strong local scene. You're going to grow at best a strong, very tight knit circle of 4 or 6 players or whatever. Um, but I think in order to grow a scene, you need to be playing in a store or someplace out in the open where people are that they might see you. So they can say, "Oh wow, hey, what you doing?" or "Hey, I used to play that," or whatever. So I would just, the way I tend to think about it is there a store where I can play? And if not, if there's stores around and there's really no active scene, and I've run into that a couple times, um, then I try to work something out. So first, I mean, I would ask, is it okay if we play here? I mean, if it's a Games Workshop store and you're not playing a Games Workshop game, obviously that's not going to fly. But a lot of stores, they have some gaming areas. I've been in some stores that have like 1 or 2 tables, then another store has 4 tables, and then another store has space for 20 tables, and that makes a big difference. A store with 1 or 2 tables um, may not be an ideal place to play either. You really can't get much going on there. Um, but I know one store, wasn't thrilled about the idea of people playing there because they'd had a bad experience where like nobody was buying stuff. And so they started saying, "Hey, look, that's fine if you want to play here. Just make sure that somebody buys something every time." Which really kind of rubbed me the wrong way at the time, but I would do that. I mean, the first few times we played there, I bought some little a paint, a couple things of paint every time, or a paintbrush. Then after a while, I started just buying some things, and the guy knew that on average I was killing the $5 minimum, so it wasn't a big deal. But a step up from that, what you really want people to do is say, "Look, let us play here," and over time we just kind of buy stuff from you. And then I think what you need to do is you need to support the store. If you can buy something on the internet or buy it in the local store, you buy it in your store. And if it costs more money, and a lot of times it does, that extra money is what you're paying for the privilege of using that store, you know. And there are huge advantages to it. I mean, you're out there in the open, you're playing stuff. People come in the store to shop, they see you, and people get exposed to the game. And it's surprising how many people used to play as some edition of Warhammer or some other game system that's similar enough. Um, I think the next step I would do too is I would start hosting tournaments. I know one of the scenes that with another guy that we kind of built up. I remember starting and a friend of mine, he hosted a tournament. He ran the tournament in a local game store. We had 6 or 8 people. Like in hindsight, it was nothing, but at the time for me, it was a big deal. And it kind of got me excited. It's like, yeah, it's one thing to play and do whatever, but it's like, oh, hey, this is a tournament, and we started having one of those every month or two, and it was kind of exciting. It was a reason to play besides just playing to have fun. It's because you were looking forward to it. You wanted to play test lists, stuff like that. What I would do if I wanted a store to support it, I would just find out what they want out of it. What are they trying to do? I mean, in my mind, it's like, look, we charge some kind of entry fee. All the entry fees get put towards prizes, and all the prizes are in the form of store credit. I mean, that's a way to do it. And basically, you're like, look, if you let us have a tournament, and if entry fees are anywhere from on a 1-day tournament, maybe it's $5, $10, or $15. On a 2-day tournament, I expect we usually pay what, $35 or something. However much money times that many people, you're like, it's just guaranteed sales, and not only we're taking up space, but what else are you going to do with that space? We're playing a game, and you sell this kind of stuff. We get excited. We buy more stuff. Other people see us. They might buy more stuff. You just kind of you're trying to get the store owner to see that you're just kind of doing it because it's the right thing to do. It's good for you in the long term. And then I would also offer to help them build up their supply of tables and terrain or anything like that. I would, it's their business, so I don't feel opposed to them, paying for it. But at the same time, I wouldn't mind paying for it. And I certainly wouldn't mind going down and helping them build it so that they get a sense that, we're trying to contribute. We care. We're not just taking advantage of them. All right, so there's that. But that's only going to take you so far because when you're playing, and this is a tough one, I know, but when you're playing and people walk down, the store aisle and they stop at your table and they look, you got to be nice to them. It's a weird thing. But so many people aren't, man. And I get it. Like a lot of times I'm in a game and I'm thinking and I'm stressed, or maybe things are not going my way and I'm tense at the moment and stuff like that. But anybody who's seen me play, if somebody new comes around and I'm not in a rush like a tournament, I'll pause the game and I'll just say, hey, how's it going, man? You familiar with this? You ever played this game? Just start talking to them. And a lot of times, they might be like, nah, whatever, and walk away. I'm like, that's cool. It didn't hurt me. But sometimes they're like, nah, this is really interesting. What is this? And we talk about it a little. Or they'll say, yeah, man, I used to play High Elves back in Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition. And we're like, oh, really? That's really cool. And you just kind of talk to them, man. Kind of be nice. If somebody new moves to the area, welcome them. Say, hey, man, great. Glad to have you here. Let's schedule a game. Um, a lot of times you get people that are new. They're either new to this type of game, or maybe they're just new to the Ninth Age, right? They used to play Warhammer 8th edition in this Ninth Age. Um, I think it's important to nurture the new players, and what I mean by that is, in addition to just being nice, like one thing, if it's a new player that doesn't have an army, one of the things I do is I say, look, I've got a number of armies. If you are willing to play one of them and send me your list, I will bring my armies with me and you can play my army. I'll put the army list together. I'll put the models together, bring it in a bin. You take care of my stuff. And, you play with it. When I'm done with my game, you're done with your game. I take my stuff home. But, I offer people to use my armies, and very rarely do people ever take me up on it. I think a couple people have, but usually they weren't even new players. They were just people who wanted to try a new army. But I always offer because, I know how intimidating it can be to have nothing and then think of, oh, I've got to spend all this money. I've got to assemble, and then like, do I really know what list I want? Because I don't mind rules changing where I have to change my list because I have any army I play, I have so much stuff that like I don't mind buying a little bit more and expanding it forever, and I can put together whatever list I want. But I know that when you're starting a new army, if you're just getting into the game, man, that's intimidating. You're like, I'm going to buy these models, and what if that's not the list I like? And then I have to buy more stuff, and it's, blah, blah, blah. Another way I think it's important to nurture noobs is, you don't have to win every game you play. And I don't think you should patronize people and try to lose or make dumb mistakes. Actually, I think it's a horrible thing to do because, if you start doing dumb things, kind of teaching them to play in a dumb way. So I don't think you should do that. But I think you can play games to where you're talking through all decisions made. Like I really don't like to tell my opponent what to do, even if I think they should do something. I try not to, because inevitably I'm like, I think you should do this, and they do it, and I'm like, oh, I've got a great counter for that, and then I feel like a jerk. I'm like, well, I didn't see my counter at the time. I just looked like I thought you should do. Um, but what I do like to do is to say, here's what I think you might want to consider thinking about before you move that unit. So, um, you know, are you worried about machining? Is there some magic phase? Is there certain? What are you trying to accomplish with it? And I try to just kind of talk through them. And I don't, and again, I think people would say I don't do it in a patronizing manner. I just kind of let's just play some games where we just think out loud, and both of us do. I can even tell them this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm trying to set up. And when you do that, your games will go 50-50. You'll lose as much as you win because both of you are playing both sides, and at that point it's whatever, and that's okay. You're not making marks on your bedpost like being another guy. You're trying to help somebody learn how to play the game in a way that you both have fun. I think it's when I'm playing new people especially, I want to make sure that they know all the relevant rules before they make a mistake. So again, not telling them what to do, saying, well, just saying, hey, this is how this is going to work. So when you're making this decision, just consider these things. I won't do that in a tournament. I don't do that with experienced players, but I do that with newer players. I think I don't think you always have to bring your A game, your A list, I should say. If it's a new player and you want them, you've done those talk through games, and they really just kind of want to play their own game, man, bring a softer list. What are you trying to prove? Bring a softer list. Because what's really demoralizing for new players is to lose 20 games in a row. It's not fun. And then they're just like they get demoralized and like, yeah, obviously I'm not cut out for this game, or this I never seem to have fun playing this game. Again, don't throw a game. Don't patronize them, but you can bring a softer list. You can help them not make really obvious mistakes. And then I would say, if people are willing to do it, help them think through their lists, help them think through their deployment strategies, their in-game decisions, and tell them to watch battle reports. I mean, mine obviously, but I think watching battle reports is a wonderfully helpful way to learn the game. It doesn't really help you learn the nitpicky rules of the game, but it really helps you learn the movement phase and strategies and different kinds of units and stuff like that. All right, some other ideas. I think it's important to generate enthusiasm, and there's a lot of ways to do that, and I'm not sure any single one of my ideas is applicable in every situation. But let me tell you some things I've done in the past. Many years ago, there was not a big tournament scene in my area. Matter of fact, except for those one-day tournaments with maybe 6 or 8 people, I'd never gone to a two-day tournament until I moved to the Midwest, and I played for several years. And even there, I think it took me a year before I started attending tournaments. It just wasn't something we did. Um, so I've talked about this on my channel before, but one thing we did here in North Carolina was we started a league. So it seemed to me that we had a small group of players in my city. It seemed to me that there were other mid-sized to large cities around the state and even in adjacent states that would have a small group of players. So I had this idea, we just kind of you did a snowball effect where you did everybody, who did you know that we could contact and who did they know that we could contact, and we just kind of got in contact with players up to 4 hours away. And we pitched this idea that we set up a league to where they're their own league, and they play, everybody plays each other, and they come up with their winner, maybe their, I think, the top two places. And every week everybody would report in their games, and I would send an email out to everybody in the league, and I forget how many people we had. It was kind of a lot. And I would say, oh, so and so played so and so this army, there's this army, and so and so crushed them. And I was making crap up. I didn't know these people. I didn't know much, but it generated enthusiasm, like among this league. Like people are playing their own local crowd, but they know that the results of their games are being reported out to this larger community, and they're following the larger community. And then at the end, we had the top two people from each league all come to one day tournament, and we kind of had a, a championship. And I think I did that 2 years in a row, and then I moved. And that went a long way. Matter of fact, I think that's part of the reason why we have such a strong tournament scene here now. It's not the only reason why, but that really got people playing, get to know each other, players in the state, not just their own city. It it I know at the time there was one tournament in the state that I know about that was a GT, a 2-day tournament, and they had 20 people at it, and they thought that was like the biggest deal ever. So there wasn't a big tournament scene there, but now people from these various cities started traveling to the tournaments because hey, I know those guys, let's go play them, and it just really took off. I did the same idea that ran the league when I went to the Midwest. I think I did it one season. I think I did it like the second year I was there, and then I moved, and it did the same thing. We had people in Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Indianapolis, and I'm sure some people knew each other before then, but from my perspective, it's like we got to know all these players that lived in an hour or two away, and it kind of generated enthusiasm. We started traveling to each other's one-day tournaments. We all started traveling to the two-day tournaments. It I think something like that went a long way towards generating enthusiasm. Another thing to do that I would say is attend tournaments. Attend the one-dayers, attend the 2 days. Be willing to travel to them. Then hopefully you're developing relationships with people so that you start traveling to each other's tournaments. And then, the more you do that, you get more people excited, and then everybody's individual area tends to grow. And then I would say next to that is if after that, if you need to, I think you should run tournaments. I don't think you should feel obligated to run tournaments. I'm saying that if you don't have a 1-day tournament once a month and a 2-day tournament every 3 months, then people need to start stepping up and offering more tournaments. And if pitch in if that's what it needs. Um, Another thing that generates enthusiasm is helping each other prepare for tournaments. I know that sometimes I can get in a slump with playing, and then a buddy of mine will say, "Hey, there's this tournament coming up in 2 months. Have you thought about the list?" And I'm like, "No." And we start thinking about it, and then for the next 2 months, we're play testing that list, and I'm buying stuff and building stuff and painting stuff, and then I'm really excited because I've got these things I've painted, and I'm excited to play test this list, and it's things like that. I think go a long way. I think for your local group, um, once you start going to these traveling to tournaments, then you really have a true gaming club. It's not just that you play each other a lot, but now you're going to tournaments, and if they have best club awards, you're going as a club. You're traveling together to them, and little things like that, like stopping for lunch on a way to a tournament, and hanging out in a hotel on the night between the 2-day tournament. Things like that really kind of build community. I print your club T-shirts. Print dice. Um, or in addition to tournaments or instead of tournaments, run campaigns. There are people that love to do that. The more they like the fluff side of it, and that can be a lot of fun. The other thing I think is important is you need to have a good communication system. I think this thing where like you'll just text your buddy and say, "Hey, do you want a game next Tuesday night?" is a horrible way to build a local gaming club. Now I've seen some people where they get a group text, and so they'll have 8 people on it. But just keep in mind, it's hard for new people to break into that texting communication system. I don't think it's a good way to do it. I think there could be a lot of ways to do it, but come on, people. With the internet, we have no excuse for this. So, I mean, our group, we created a new club locally, and we created a Facebook page. And so it's like, yeah, you have to be accepted into it, but it's a place people can go. They can ask to be accepted. We just added. If we knew somebody had a Facebook account, then we just added them. Other people who didn't have a Facebook account were just like, man, just create one. Don't put any personal info up there. Just create it one and then check it. And that's how we talk to each other. And so we use that for scheduling games. We use it for, sometimes we want to trade models or sell stuff, or we need advice or whatever. It's one place, but it's just kind of open and more easily accessible. And then of course you can register on the Ninth Ages website. They have a map function where you put in the town you live in, so people can find you, and you can find other people. And not enough people are using that, because when I go to try to find people in a city, because a lot of times when I travel, I've got time to kill. I'll try to find people there, and I'll say, hey, let's play a game, or let's go out for dinner. Let's just hang out, man. I mean, this is kind of my hobby, and you're in the hobby, and let's do stuff like that. So, register on the Ninth Age's map function. It's, nobody's going to track you down and come steal your house. I mean, you don't know what the privacy issues that would be there. It helps new players find you and helps you find new players. So that's really that's really what I had. I mean, the game club we have now is actually really cool, man. We had a club here before, and a lot of people just moved away. A couple people quit the hobby, but for some reason, a lot of people just moved away, and it really kind of died down a little bit. And I think partly because of my channel, some people contacted me saying that hey, they're excited for the ninth age. They wanted to start playing, and there was like one circle of friends who knew somebody who had a different circle of friends who had a gaming club, and these were all 40K players. And so, we had the remnants of our former club, and we just kind of created this new club and purposely said, this is our club with all of you guys. And we changed the store we went to, and changed the night that we played, and just kind of started actively trying to nurture that club. And I know last night we had 4 tables, 8 people playing, and one or two people watching. And then there's a couple people there that are part of the club, but they were playing another game system because they're not exclusive to the Ninth Age, and that's great. And it's been nice. It's like new. There's enough people to play that, and a lot of people play more than one army. That I'm playing a lot of. Even though I'm not doing battle reports right now, I'm playing a lot of games, a lot of different people, a lot of different armies, and it and we're traveling to tournaments. It's just kind of a lot of fun. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for how to build a gaming community. If I've left anything out, please leave a comment and share your ideas.